The best ideas rarely win. No, the ideas with the best marketing win. And you've probably heard this. It's tried, it's true, because we see examples of it all the time. You see average ideas kind of masquerading, but getting all the limelight out on social and on email lists and on even on traditional like TV and stuff. You're getting these ideas, and people are like, and you're like, I got some great ideas, but they're rotting away in your Google Docs and your Evernote or your Notion doc, wherever you put them. You're working through it. And you're like, how come everybody else's ideas are getting out there? Mine are just sitting around, not getting passed around. They are much better. And I believe you. We both believe you. It happens all the time. So in this episode, I want to walk you through the 5 different elements that all ideas need in order to actually get shared. So welcome back to the AI Driven Marketer, where we're continuing our series around Own the Show, our podcast to book series, where we are documenting what it takes to succeed and what it takes to become an authority in the age of AI. I'm Dan Sanchez, and this is my co-host, Ken Ferre.
What's up, what's up, what's up?
And let's just dive right into it. Starting with the first element all ideas need in order to get shared more, and that is a proper name. Dude, this is like if you could only have one thing, like forget everything else. This is the most critical, and it's the most frustrating to me. I'm reminded every time I go to my son's soccer practice and the coach is like, "Oh, we're going to do that one such and such drill." I'm like, "The what drill? Like what's the name for that one?" He's like, the one where they pass it around, the pole and stuff. I'm like, "Dude, there's freaking poles in the ground on all the drills. Like which one are you talking about?" But on some, it's easy. He's like, "Oh yeah, do the bow tie drill. Oh, do the chicken head drill." We're all like, "Okay, well, I know what that one is." It's got a name. And it's like names are such helpful things. It's like if we don't give something a name, we don't like. How do you even share it? Like to be like, "Oh, do the barn door protocol, Jarvis." It's like, oh, Jarvis understood the name so that Tony Stark could call it out in Avengers, right? It needs a name in order for it to be activated. And I just find it's one of those things that I'm like, why don't people name their stuff? Everything needs a name.
Well, and I think part of it is that naming is difficult. I mean, I do a lot of like public speaking, communication, sermons, podcasting, and man, the thing that's always been the hardest for like an idea, or especially like coming up with a name for a podcast, oh my gosh, I cannot tell you how many times I've gone back and forth on podcasting naming. Dan has helped me a ton of times.
It is hard.
It is one of the most difficult things, but it needs to be simple. It needs to be memorable, right? So that people could be like, oh, yes. And you want to be excited. It expresses the idea in the name, but it is difficult to do.
And maybe that's why we don't see more of it. Though I will give you a few tips if you're listening to this. First, there's kind of 2 major levers. There's multiple aspects to good names, multiple. But if I could simplify it down to just 2, it's clarity and memorability. And they fight against each other because people try to go for more memorable and we lose clarity. But just know if you're getting started, clarity trumps memorability every time. Don't try to do it. Now, as you get better at naming, then generally you can hold clarity while raising memorability, right? Which is the whole goal. But it can be a challenge. I remember one time I rolled up my sleeves. I'm like, I'm going to get this naming thing. So I had to name a bunch of podcasts when I was working at Sweetfish. We'd be launching quite a few shows a month. And for every show we launched, I have to come up with 3 to 5 great names. That was like one of my big contributions to a podcast, was coming up with good names. So I read 3 different books on naming, and 2 of them were absolute garbage. I could have known based on the name of their books, and only one of them actually had a good book title name, which should be a clear indicator that they actually know what they're doing. Let me get it. Highly recommend 10 out of 10 books. Hello, My Name is Awesome by Alexandra Watkins. Best book on naming. It's not a big book. So if you want to become an expert namer, which if you're in the game of thought leadership, if you want to become an authority, this one is probably a skill set you should develop because you're coming up with a lot of ideas all the time. So being able to name things well and building a skill around this is probably worth doing. There's a lot of things that you're going to have to be good at to become a leader of people's thoughts, but naming one is like, there's so many things to learn, but like, I don't know if you can drop this one, but maybe you can have someone that works with you or for you that helps you with this. I don't know. What do you think, Ken?
Yeah.
Is it worth at least reading one book for.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think the other book that I was thinking about was we both just recently read it, Wealthy and Well Known: Build Your Personal Brand by Rory and
Rory
AJ
Vaden,
Vaden.
very good.
It like brought so much clarity to me. Even as you were talking, I was like, I got to read both of these books again. This one and Hello, My Name is Awesome. Because it really is something that you are constantly doing. And I know this is an AI show. You could just be like, I could just ask AI. But man, sometimes AI, if I'm honest, just kind of gives you some weak names. And it's like, it's good directional, but there's like a human element that it's missing
Gosh, yeah.
that
You know, we
doesn't.
just got some new models too, and I haven't tested them. Like we have ChatGPT 5.1 at the time of this recording. Gemini 3 just dropped today, like a few hours ago. And I'm like, oh,
Ooh.
I don't know. It's been a while since I've been like, come up with some names and then just give it like a short description of what you're trying to name and see if it can come up with some zingers. I'll have to test it. But as far as I know right now, the names AI comes up with, not very good. Naming is hard. As
Yeah.
good as the models are, they're still not coming up with good names.
Yeah. There's an intuition that you need, that human element that both is brings clarity and it's memorable.
Yeah.
It's great with like alliterations and stuff like that, but it doesn't have that oomph like, ooh, I like that.
Yeah. The best hack in this book, Hello, My Name is Awesome, that I use over and over again. It's not the end all be all, and I've found many names outside this one hack, but I find that it's reliable and it's logical and repeatable. It's not like it takes less intuition to find it than normal. And that is coming up with the general words that you use to describe a thing and then finding rhymes for those words. So if you're coming up with uh, a podcast about podcasting. A mic would be one of those words. So you look for words that rhyme with mic, Ike, like, so you're like, okay, like rhymes with Mike. And then you just look for movie titles with the word like in it. And then you take those movie titles and you swap like for Mike and just to see if it works.
Yeah.
You just do that over and over again with all the rhymes, with all the words. You end up, it does take me like 2 hours to do this, but you end up finding some really good ones. That's actually how I came up with the name Mike Club originally. It came from Fight Club and I had Mike Club and I'm like, ooh, that rings.
Yeah. For all the older millennials, they're like, ooh, it rings a bell. For other people who've never seen the movie, they're like, no idea.
Yeah. And it still works.
Yeah.
So you got to have a good name. Without a good name, it can't be passed off. Your colleagues can't share it with each other. It'd be like, oh, run that play, run that, whatever that thing is. It needs to have a name for it to be passed around. It's the most important one out of all these things. Everything else is actually much easier, especially with the help of AI now. But the name, that one just takes hard work and some skill.
Yeah.
Or you can hire someone like Alexandra who does this professionally, or read her book and figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
Next one.
I was going to say the one thing I would add is that like a name, the part of the reason why it's so hard, but it's so important is that it synthesizes your values, like we talked about earlier. And it also synthesizes your pillars of what your content is going to be about. And if you don't have that, it's always going to be like, well, what are we talking about? That's why when you listen to the AI driven marketer, you kind of have an idea of what the topics are always going to be about because it's in the name.
The next one is you need to have a short description. I know it sounds like, of course, but like how many people can't describe their idea in just a few sentences? All the time. That's why we like emphasize often, even with businesses, like, do you have an elevator pitch? Can you explain your business simply about why it's valuable and why somebody would want to invest or buy the thing in just a few sentences? It's usually a struggle. Luckily, like AI can really help you. You can literally just like word vomit everything you know about the idea and be like, ChatGPT, come up with an elevator pitch for you. Done.
Yeah.
It's just that easy. It doesn't, you don't even need, I don't have to give you a prompt. I don't have to build a custom GPT for you. Be like, Chat GPT, give me a 3-sentence elevator pitch based on all this word vomit I just dictated into this app. Done. So there's no excuse for this one. The naming part's hard. Short description, you should be able to have it done. And then you probably need to memorize that short description and then use it often.
Yeah. And it's okay at the first version to play around with it. Like I'm always testing new ones like, oh, how does it look? How does it feel? Does it make sense to people? And I actually typically have like 2 or 3 descriptions depending on who I'm talking to. Like if it's an expert in my field, I can use a little bit more jargon. If it's someone who's like my daughter who's 8, right? I'm always thinking about the person who has no concept of what we do. How do we explain it? It happened with when we started doing all of our AI driven podcast stuff. I remember talking to some people who were like, wait, what do you do with AI driven? How does that work? I'm like, oh, they have no concept about AI. So I had to just kind of like cut that part out for a second and explain it later on like our methodology, not necessarily like what we do.
So the next one is the long description. And this needs some explanation because it doesn't need to be exhaustive. Like some people can write a whole book on their thing. And I'm like, no, 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 not a book. Just in my mind, it's about the length of a blog post and not necessarily long one, maybe 1,200 words to 2,000 words, somewhere in there that breaks it down. What is it? Why is it? Covers essentially the 5 W's and how
Yeah.
in about 1,200 to 2,000 words. That's the long description. When people are interested and they're leaning in, they're like, tell me more. Then you could start unpacking it. Again, just walking through the 5 W's and how on the who, what, when, where, why, and how this idea works is generally all people need in order to get a good sense of it.
Yeah. Which leads to then our fourth one, which is a story or a metaphor. Now, I love this one because logic makes things really clear, right? Like the who, what, where, when, why, really clear. But stories make it stick. How many of us have listened to so many TED Talks, so many lectures, so many podcasts, but the things you remember about it is a story that grips you, that you're like, oh my gosh, it hits the emotional part of your life, the soul, right? And you're like, I'm going to remember that. And even for guys, man, there's sometimes I listen to a story and I start tearing when I'm thinking about it. I cry so much when I start to see, like, for example, little kids die in a movie because I'm like, oh, it grips me for a dad who has 4 kids and a fifth one on the way soon, right? It's those are the things that you need to make sure it works. Now, when it comes to business, you could use a metaphor, you could use a case study, you could use a mini story, anything that paints the picture of your main idea.
And the metaphor one I think is really powerful. In fact, this one kind of blends in with naming, but what we're calling AI, artificial intelligence, it was not always called that. In fact, the whole
Ooh.
field of artificial intelligence it didn't catch on. People were trying to push it. A specific dude was like trying to like make this a topic and he didn't get it because he didn't have the packaging right specifically with the metaphor. In fact, before it was called artificial intelligence, it was called automation or cybernetics. We called it thinking machines. And then he started throwing out the term artificial intelligence, which if you think about it is a bit of a metaphor.
Hmm.
People were like, "Oh, leaning in, tell me more." And it started catching on, and this was like way back in the 50s too. So like this is how early and how long people have been studying artificial intelligence. It's crazy. But it wasn't until they had the right metaphor for it to hook people's minds and give them a almost like a visual in their head of this thing. Like, oh my gosh, like a machine that's like us. Like it started blending into their minds of like what it could be, and they started leaning in. It became a field, and a lot of fun with science fiction movies and books for a long time before we finally got to AI today. So story or metaphor or both could be great. And then the last one I think is the one people probably skip the most often, but is really, really helpful is visual, the simple visual. There's a lot of us out here that we just need a picture, man. Just give me the picture.
Yeah.
Make it simple. Less words. ChatGPT.
Yeah. And so, and this could be like a diagram, right? It could be an icon. It could be a sketch. It could be a simple graphic. Draw it on a napkin, right? Like someone gets it enough. I remember I was talking to a mentor of mine, and he's since passed. We were talking about admissions directors actually, and he's like, Ken, what are the skills you need for an admissions director? He was kind of mentoring me, and I'm like, I think you need this, this, this. He's like, would you write a job description? I'm like, yeah. He's like, how long do you think that job description is going to be? I'm like, I don't know, 3 pages, 2 pages, I don't know. He's like, I'm gonna do it in a napkin for you. And he literally like wrote a graph and he's like, I want you to see all these little main responsibilities. And then this was the like aha moment. He's like, what's your gap in each one of these? What's your level, one to
Yeah.
10? And he did that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was ingenious. Ever since that, I've been using that whenever I like hire people. like, and make them go through that exercise for them to see, ooh, this is the gap that they have, and this is what you actually need. But that visual, even now, this was 9 years ago, I still remember it. That's why visuals are so important. Now, Dan, for you, there are some people who are like, I wish I could be visual. I wish I could sketch stuff out, but they might feel like they're not a designer. They're not someone who's good artistically. What are some good tips for them to make things visual?
Man, this is another one where you could just lean on AI to do it. And I highly recommend there's so many different visual tools. I recommend using ChatGPT's image generator. It is much better at dealing with abstract images than the rest right now. I'm hoping Google like launches their next visual builder. It's rumored that they will this week. We'll see if they do. Fingers crossed, because they just launched Gemini 3. They're supposed to do Nano Banana 2, even though they just released Nano Banana like just a month or two ago. It's like, okay, I'm up
They're
for it.
hustling,
But
man.
right
They're
now,
hustling.
I know, ChatGPT, you better catch up. But ChatGPT is much better at dealing with abstract things and then making them concrete and visual in nature. It's a much better designer, even though Nano Banana is better with like photo manipulation, I'd say. But this is not what we need. We generally need to make things that are abstract to the visual concepts. Brainstorm with AI about what some visual concepts can be. I usually like to have it give me 3 different visual ways of representing an idea, and then I take each and then say, write me 3 prompts for these 3 visual ideas. And then I take each prompt and I turn it into the idea. And then I just pick the winner and maybe go another couple other rounds with it. Now, if you have a bunch of different ideas, you might have to bring some uniformity across all these different visuals. And that's a more challenging design task. And you might need to hire a graphic designer for that. But for just coming up with your first pass on the visual or even an idea for a visual, AI can be a really helpful partner on that. And as a visual learner, please do this for me. As much as I like listening to the podcast, sometimes the visual just hooks better.
Yeah.
I have to do it for every single one of these episodes. I have to go through a visual creation process of creating the YouTube thumbnail for every single one of these episodes. And that's always fun. I'm always really excited to put that out there.
Yeah.
But I'll probably have to come up with a totally different system even for the book. So we'll see what I do there.
Now, I will say one thing when you create a visual, Dan and I are both visual individuals, like highly. Some of you are going to go more into the academic world and think I should create visuals like in an academic textbook. Please, for the love of God, don't do that. Keep it simple, right? Like I always open my like certain textbooks, right? And I'm like, why is this thing so complex? I don't understand it. Like you need a whole chapter just to read the diagram, right? That defeats the whole purpose. The diagram should be able to easily explain one idea. And if you're trying to explain multiple things, you probably need multiple visuals.
So, why do we do all this stuff? Yes, it's good marketing. It makes it easier for the idea to spread. But ultimately, it's the most considerate thing you can do. If your ideas are actually that useful, you have to remember like your idea is only as good as it's able to be understood. Yes, intentional rhyme. Remember that. Idea is only as good as it's able to be understood. So we package it, we market it, and we try to come up with all these different elements for it so that people can actually grab it, understand it, and then share it with other people. It takes extra work. You've already put so much work into creating the idea, you might as well put in the extra work of packaging it so that it can actually be properly shared, received, and carried and shared with other people. You want to take every single idea you have and actually make a Google Doc for it or maybe a Notion doc for it somewhere. It's also good to document all this stuff so you can feed it into AI is maybe like a custom GPT or in a project so that your AI copilot can actually have access to these ideas as you've defined them. So as it's helping you repurposing them, like maybe into a book like we are, you can actually like have AI better grasp exactly what you mean with your idea. And you can use the name and not have to explain the idea every single time because it knows, oh, this name means this idea. And then AI becomes AI becomes an excellent partner for you coming up with content because it has access to a little library of ideas. Now, in the next episode, we're going to talk about how to actually not just take all these little packages, but how to arrange them all into something I call an idea portfolio. But we'll save that for tomorrow.